Um, wonder if we could move on to Epinoia if,
Sure.
and describe how what maybe there's a distinction between just imagination and what epinoia actually is.
hmm Well, there's several ways to state that. One way I can state it is that imagination or fantasy, in a loose sense, is uh, featuring things, picturing things in your mind, either that don't exist or that don't exist yet. You know, they might exist in the future, but they don't exist yet. So you're imagining what might be. The true use of imagination is to imagine what is, to imagine how it really is. For instance, my meme for that is to say a simple statement. I don't care what religion you've looked at, what metaphysical system, what spiritual paradigms. If I tell you that you're living in a divine experiment, I'm inviting you to imagine that, that happening now. You're in an experiment now. That's the correct use of epinoia. And I always quote that famous line from an alchemical manuscript, which says to perform the alchemical operation with the true and not the fantastic imagination. So epinoia is the true imagination, and everything else, which is fantasy, pretending, video games, you know, Jewish fairy tales about the Savior, all of that is the fantastic imagination. So how can you know the difference? It's simple. If you frame your imagination in her story, that's the true imagination.
Hmm.
If you don't frame it in that story, it's not true.
Okay.
Because she
And when you,
is source. She is source. Earth is source.
hmm,
So it to me, it's these truths, these insights, or let's say these fundamental ideas of what I've taught. Uh, I want to get across when I communicate. They're really simple, man. They're very, very basic. You're based. This is how you get based spiritually and metaphysically and intellectually.
mhm. When you say framing into a story, do you mean that you can use your imagination to create a narrative, or do you mean that it's based on the FGS, for example, or both?
It's based on the FGF, but there is room for innovation inside the FGS.
Hmm.
So it's like you say, you and I decided we want to make a movie, okay? And we invite a few people in. So we're a team of scriptwriters. And let's say that someone gave us the basic plot for the movie. So we have a first draft of the screenplay, and we have the basic plot, okay? The beginning, the middle, and the end, the three acts of the screenplay. And then we say, okay, well, we can change it, we can develop it, but only within that screenplay that we've been given. We
Hmm.
can't go outside of that. Everything that we invent and add to it comes from being grounded in that narrative. That's the power of that narrative. It's the only narrative that roots your neuro linguistic programming towards source.
So would you say Parzival, for example, is based in that narrative?
Parsifal is central to that narrative because it is the European Aryan uh, folk legend that describes actually who we are,
Hmm.
the Grail family.
Hmm.
So when you are in the Sophianic narrative and when it's the frame of your experience, then you are in the Grail family and you are part of that great drama of the story of Parsifal, which is the story of a mystic, a warrior, and a lover, right? He was all three of those things, right? And so I've always said, I think I said before that the Grail legend is like the thread that connects the supernatural narrative of Sophia to us today, to the social order.
Okay. Hmm. And frames us within a story.
Yeah, and a story that you can identify with, you know.
Yeah.
I talked with people, you know, there's this thing called a proxy. Now, Rudolf Steiner, by the way, let's get back to him for a moment. He claimed that he could detect past lives. And at the end of his life, basically when he's on his deathbed, I don't